Rui Hachimura, future with the Lakers. Is it just me, or does it feel like for a player that is, pretty involved with the Lakers, has been there for the last couple of years, has been a part of some playoff runs for the Lakers, I feel like Rui, I don't know if I have a full grasp on how people feel about Rui Hachimura, at least from a Laker fan perspective. I feel like some people say Rui's a really nice player. This is a big season for him. If Rui can have a good season, then maybe the Lakers will re-sign him. And then I got other people that I feel like, Rui just a part of a trade. That's it. He's just got to be a part of a trade. I got some people that like him in the starting lineup. Some people don't. Rui, I feel like, is just kind of his own complete question mark. I mentioned Dan Weike in The Athletic had some different questions that were out there. And I think one of the questions, and this kind of sparked my topic, what is going to happen to Rui Hachimura after his current contract? This was one of the questions on there. I'm going to read what Dan Weike said, and then I'll give my opinion as well. He said, Hachimura to me represent a lot about what the Lakers have done right in terms of IDing an undervalued player and molding him to a useful piece while also showcasing some of their weaknesses. And he does a lot of that stuff that should shine alongside Luka. So basically, I think the point that Dan's trying to make is Rui can have some success with Luka. We were, I don't know what it was, maybe a week ago, a little bit longer, we are trying to make an argument of who should start, who should come off the bench. And I think in a lot of that time, that was being brought up of who should start, who come off the bench. One of the reasons why I didn't want to have Rui come off the bench, this is just my opinion, is I think Rui's best value is going to be there when there's attention on other players, when there's attention on LeBron, when there's attention on Luka. I don't think you want to create a scenario where Rui is one of the focal points or run something through Rui or anything like that. I just don't think that's part of Rui's game. Now, maybe I think Rui is more, hey, there's so much attention on Luka and LeBron. I get open looks. I get a chance to get to the basket. I get a pass from Luka. I get a pass from LeBron. I get an easy bucket. I think that's where Rui has a little bit more of his value. But I do think at the same time, I do think there's a little bit out there where you always feel like you didn't get enough from Rui. And I think that's safe to say. I think for Rui, I would always do these post-game shows, and I say to myself, we'd have 2 games in a row where Rui was, you'd have 2 games where you forgot Rui was on the floor, and then you'd have a game where it's like, damn, Rui had a really nice first half. He went 7 of 9 from the field, ended up with 14 points and 7 rebounds, and you're like, I felt his presence today. Or maybe he had 20 points in the game, whatever the case is. I think it's going to be interesting what the Lakers do with Rui. I still think that I think they would like to keep him, but I think that they also know that there's no player on this roster that they would keep just to keep. I think that, there is a world where Rui could be a part of the future of the Lakers. There is a world where Rui has value, but I also think there's a world where the Lakers are like, yep, we're not going to stop on making this trade because Rui Hachimura is part of the deal. So Rui's got a kind of interesting spot, I think, in Lakerland. And I think he's got an interesting spot in regards to, obviously his value on the team. And I think people's fandom of Rui is a little up in the air. I think there are times where they're like, hey, Rui had a really good night. And then there are other times it's like, okay, hey, there's Rui Hachimura. One other thing Dan Weike said about Rui. He said, another good season, you could argue that he should be with the Lakers for another multi-year stint, even if it eats into some of their future flexibility. But if the defensive gains weren't real and the shooting suffers, keeping the books clean becomes the better option. Guys, this is why I think kind of walking into this next season is so important, where you just keep the flexibility there. Because if you don't keep that flexibility, and I think this year will determine the future of Austin Reeves, it will determine the future of Rui Hachimura. I think naturally we're going to wait to see what happens with LeBron. I think that obviously that's going to kind of take care of itself one way or the other. But I think what the Lakers are really, really trying to do, can we make sure if we have contracts that are on the books, that we just make sure that those contracts they're fair, that they make sense. That this is obviously something that the Lakers aren't hand tying themselves or anything along those lines. So I think that's going to be the big thing. And we'll obviously have to take it from there. We'll wait to see. And I think the Lakers, it feels like a little bit more patience, a little bit more structure from that perspective. And we'll see how much that comes to play once the season starts. All right, let's take a look here. Let's see. People are acting like Rui was supposed to be our savior, but in fact, he was just a quality piece added to a team. Yeah, I think, actually, I'm going to disagree with that. I'll tell you what I disagree. I don't think anybody thought he was going to be the savior. I think people just thought, when he signed that deal, the 3-year, Lakers in the same summer signed Rui Hachimura. I think they signed Austin Reeves, and I want to say they signed D'Lo. I think they signed all those guys in the same year. And I remember when I was doing radio, Brian Windhorst came on the show, and Windhorst said the deal he's most concerned about was Rui's deal because it was a healthy contract, $17 million a year. And it was a 3-year deal, $17 million a year. And maybe that wasn't the same year as Austin Reeves. That might have been Gabe Vincent, D'Angelo. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I know this. I know that when Rui signed, it was like, hey, that's good money for Rui Hachimura. And will he be able to live up to some of those expectations? I don't think he's a savior, but I think he's supposed to be an important piece that plays a role. And at times he's done that. Other times he hasn't. So it is what it is in regards to that, but that gives kind of a little bit of an idea from there. Let's see what we got here. On every team. Okay. Let's see what we got. I just seen a comment. Rui could rebound, defend more. Look, I do agree. I think that's how a lot of people view from that perspective. That's how I think a lot of people review it. Thank you very much for watching the clip. Just want to give a shout out here to one of our partners, the Wallace Firm. They are official injury attorney of the Sliwa Show and Hoops Talk, the entire channel. If you are ever in a need, and I hope you're not, but some type of serious injury with yourself or a family member of yours, I would like to personally help you by introducing you to the best in the business, Brad Wallace and the Wallace Firm. Also got a URL out here that you can use as well. Just go to wallacewins.com/Sliwa. Thank you for their partnership, and thank you for being a part of the Sliwa Show.